Chapter 12 is all about unfair trade practices. Chapter 11 is about antitrust laws. Chapter 12 is even more specific, although it all stems from the same piece of legislation. This is about unfair trade practices. So most of the oversight of this comes from the Consumer Protection Act. The Consumer Protection Act says that that unfair or deceptive acts or practices in or affecting commerce are what that's what they do. They kind of try to get rid of this. So if something happens to a consumer, they can sue for either punitive or compensatory damages. So let me explain what punitive and compensatory damages are. The root word of compensatory is compensate. So compensatory damages are damages that actually occurred and you're being compensated for those damages. So let me give you an example. Let's say that you were riding a bicycle and somehow or another you managed to convince a jury to convince the Consumer Protection Act or the Consumer Protection Bureau that it was the manufacturer's fault. And you had hospital bills of $100,000 and you were out of work for 3 months, which was $10,000. You can sue for what's called compensatory damages for the $100,000 hospital bill and the $10,000 lost wages. Now, punitive damages are damages for, basically the root word is punish, and this is to punish the manufacturer or the company so they won't do it again. So in this case, you have $110,000 in compensatory damages. You may have another $200,000 in punitive damages. Punitive damages is where all of these huge, and I'm talking millions of dollars of lawsuits come from, as they're supposed to act as punishment so it won't happen again. Whether or not, that you can debate that. In some states actually have a cap at punitive damages. There are also times when somebody sues and they may get compensatory damages, the damages that they can prove, and then the punitive damages may be $1. I think if you can remember, what is her name? It'll come to me, but we'll go back to that. But she recently was in the news because she had a skiing accident, and the judge, Gwyneth Paltrow, I knew I could come up with it, Gwyneth Paltrow, and somebody was suing her because she was in a skiing accident, and the guy said that it was because all kinds of stuff, and then she turned around and sued him. Well, she got an award of $1. So if y'all want to look at that case, you can. That doesn't really have anything to do with the Consumer Protection Act, but it's just a case where somebody got $1. So that is possible. So let's talk about what unfair trade practices are. So product guarantees and false endorsements. Can't do it. So if somebody endorses, and you see this a lot, Oprah Winfrey has come out very strong against some kind of product. It's some kind of gummy bear that claims that you can lose like 30 pounds in a week or something like that. And it says that she endorses it. She does not. That is an unfair trade practice. And I know that she's trying to get to the bottom of it so that she can sue whoever is responsible. But you can't have false endorsements. Unfair advertising. Unfair advertising is when you misrepresent a product. Things such as, well, you may have heard something called bait and switch, where you advertise an inexpensive product, and then when you go to get it, it's a much more expensive product. That's an unfair advertising. Taking advantage of consumers. And as somebody who lives, my 87-year-old father lives with me, and he's had a stroke. So this one really speaks to my heart. This is taking advantage of consumers when, like, you call a senior and, you use really strong arm tactics. If you don't do this now, you may die, or your daughter may die, or, that kind of thing. But it also happens with non-native speakers. So maybe somebody is new to our country and they only speak Russian. They know very little English. So somebody will call them and try to take advantage of them using very strong words to try to get them to buy or believe something. Misrepresenting a product. This happens quite a bit, believe it or not. This is when people will say things like, well, your book uses this example. There's a cure for baldness, which there isn't, but anyway, this is kind of like the old snake oil salesman. If you watch a lot of Westerns or something like that, they're trying to misrepresent that a product will do something that it does not. And we see this quite a bit. I think that as consumers, and this is just my opinion, okay, but as consumers, we've become almost numb to this, in that we don't believe about half of what we hear because we just assume that a lot of it is misleading. One of the things that, for whatever reason, this just drives me crazy, but those going out of business sales, when there's no reason for them to go out of business, they're not going out of business, but they'll say that. And that leads us to the misleading price information. A lot of times, and we've all seen this, companies will raise the price and then knock it down and say that it's 50% off. Well, the normal price, and when they knock it down to say that it's 50% off, all they've done is knock it down to the regular price. So, it's like raising prices just to claim a sale and say that it's 50% off, when all you did was raise it 50%, and now you can claim that it's on sale. That's misleading price information. You see this a lot, and I don't mean to pick on a specific company or whatever, but cars. A lot of times cars will do this, that, hey, you're getting it for such a bargain, but they've already added a bunch of stuff to it, and then they take a percentage of that off. And the last part of unfair trade practices is failing to disclose pertinent information. And again, I hate to pick on one industry, but one of the things, especially in the last couple of weeks with all the rain in the Northeast, there's been flooding. If a car has been flooded, you are supposed to tell people that. If the odometer has been tampered with, you are supposed to tell people that. In fact, in some states, you actually have to swear that the actual that is the actual mileage, or you have to swear that the odometer has been tampered with so that the buyer doesn't necessarily know how many miles are on it. So that's failure to disclose pertinent information. So all of this comes under the kind of umbrella of the Federal Trade Commission Act of 1914. Now, the Consumer Protection Act, well, it's not even an act. The consumer protection part of that didn't come into being until 1938, and that was the Wheeler-Ley Act. So the FTC, and you've heard me call it that, and that's what most people call it, the Federal Trade Commission, is a huge organization. and it does have a relatively large impact on our daily lives. There are 3 different kind of bureaus in the FTC, and one of them you've heard me talk about is the Consumer Protection Bureau. That is who deals with unfair trade practices. There's also a Competition Bureau, which is works kind of right in hand with the Justice Department for the antitrust laws. And then the third kind of bureau, if you will, in the Federal Trade Commission is the Economics Bureau. And that's where all of like the subject matter experts, if somebody wanted to know if this claim was false, it would go to the Economics Bureau because that's where all the subject matter experts are. If you wanted to do all of the economic previews to see if competition would be unfairly affected, that's the bureau that it would go to. So these are kind of, like I said, the subject matter experts, and then you have the Consumer Protection and the Antitrust Division. So those are unfair trade practices. I'm sure that you all can probably think in your mind about something that's happened to you that may have been an unfair trade. One of the things that I always think about, and I would really, really like to know this as to how it's not an unfair trade practice, is how is it that every gas station on like the same block sells the gas for the same amount? To me, that's price fixing, but I don't know. So, they don't get their gasoline all on the same day. I mean, if it's Exxon on one and Amoco on another corner and BP half a block down, how can they all have the same price? And we see it all the time. So, to me, that's something that would fall under the Consumer Protection Act. So if you have questions, let me know. I'll be happy to help. Thanks. Bye.